I am Billy Foster, 68 years old, sitting at my son Thomas's dining table during what he called an important family meeting. After losing Margaret to cancer 18 months ago, I sold our home and moved in with him. The first few months felt like a blessing until tonight. My son just looked me straight in the eyes and demanded half my pension. His wife, Stephanie, nodded in agreement. They expected me to crumble, but instead, I smiled. When I finally stood up from that table, everything changed. As I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop a comment below, hit that subscribe button, and let me know what you would have done in my situation. For 40 years, I worked as a construction foreman for Bailey Construction in Portland. Rain or shine, summer heat, or winter freeze, I was on site by 6 in the morning, making sure everything ran smoothly. I never missed a day unless I was too sick to stand. Those decades of hard work earned me a decent pension. Nothing extravagant, but enough to live comfortably in my golden years. $3,400 a month plus Social Security. Margaret and I had planned to travel a bit, maybe visit the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone, places we had always talked about but never found the time to see. Margaret was the love of my life. We met in high school, married at 20, and spent 48 beautiful years together. She was a kindergarten teacher, beloved by generations of children in our community. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 9, but cancer is a merciless enemy. I still remember her last words to me, holding my hand in that hospital room. Take care of Tommy and the grandkids, Billy. Promise me you will be there for them. Thomas was our only child. Margaret had complications during his birth that prevented us from having more children, so we poured all our love into raising him. I worked overtime shifts every chance I got to save for his college fund. Margaret tutored neighborhood kids in the evenings for extra money. We wanted Thomas to have opportunities we never had. When he got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, I have never seen Margaret cry such happy tears. We still had to cover half his tuition, but seeing him walk across that stage with his business degree made every sacrificed vacation and second job worthwhile. Thomas met Stephanie during his final year of college. She was studying finance, ambitious and sharp as a tack. They dated for 3 years before getting married in a ceremony that cost more than our first house. Margaret and I contributed $15,000 toward their honeymoon in Europe, a sum that represented years of careful saving. I remember thinking Stephanie seemed more excited about the expensive trip than about marrying our son, but I kept those thoughts to myself. Margaret said I was being old-fashioned, that young people had different priorities nowadays. After 8 years of marriage, Thomas and Stephanie had 2 children. Jackson is now 7, a bright boy who loves dinosaurs and building things. He reminds me of Thomas at that age, always curious about how things work. Emma is 5, with Margaret's gentle spirit and infectious laugh. Before moving in, I would visit every Sunday for dinner and bring small gifts for the grandkids. Nothing expensive, just tokens to let them know Grandpa was thinking of them. Last year, Thomas and Stephanie bought a big house in Meadow Creek Estates, an upscale suburb with good schools and large lots. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a 3-car garage, and a backyard with an in-ground pool. Thomas had climbed the corporate ladder at Pacific Northwest Financial, becoming a senior investment advisor. Stephanie worked as an account manager at a marketing firm. Together, they made well over $200,000 annually. The new house was their dream home. Thomas told me proudly during a FaceTime call showing off the property. After Margaret passed, our 3-bedroom ranch house felt impossibly empty. 45 years of memories in every corner. Her gardening gloves still hanging by the back door, her favorite coffee mug in the cabinet, the slight indent on her side of the mattress. Some nights, I would wake up and reach for her before remembering she was gone. The silence was deafening. I started leaving the television on just to hear human voices. My neighbor Frank, retired like me, would check in regularly, but most days stretched out endlessly with no purpose. 6 months after the funeral, during a Sunday dinner at their new house, Thomas made the suggestion that would change everything. "Dad, Why don't you come live with us? The kids would love having you around, and that house holds too many memories. You could sell it and have a nice nest egg. We have plenty of space here with the guest suite downstairs. I hesitated at first. Moving in with adult children is complicated, even under the best circumstances. I don't want to impose on your family life, I told him. Nonsense, Thomas insisted. Mom would have wanted us to stick together. Right, Steph? Stephanie smiled and nodded, though not quite meeting my eyes. The kids would be thrilled to have Grandpa here all the time. After a week of consideration, I agreed. The real estate market was hot, and my house sold within days for $350,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and some medical bills from Margaret's treatment, I had just under $300,000 to put into my retirement savings. As a thank you for taking me in, I wrote Thomas a check for $30,000. Consider it my contribution to the household, I said. Thomas seemed surprised by the gesture. Dad, you didn't have to do that. I want to pull my weight, I replied. I know having another person in the house adds to your expenses. The first 3 months were genuinely pleasant. I settled into the guest suite, which had its own bathroom and small sitting area. I had brought only my essential belongings and a few keepsakes. The rest I had either sold, donated, or stored in Thomas's attic. I quickly found ways to contribute to the household beyond financial assistance. I cooked dinner 4 nights a week, dishes Margaret had taught me over the years, beef stew with dumplings, homemade lasagna, pot roast with all the fixings. I took care of the yard work, mowing the lawn and tending the flower beds that had been neglected in their busy lives. And most importantly, I spent quality time with Jackson and Emma, picking them up from school when Thomas and Stephanie worked late, helping with homework, teaching Jackson basic carpentry in the garage. In those early days, I felt hopeful about this new chapter. Yes, I still missed Margaret terribly, but being surrounded by family filled some of the emptiness. Each night, I would talk to her photo on my nightstand, telling her about our grandchildren and how Thomas seemed to be maturing into a responsible family man. I think we did good, Maggie, I would whisper. He turned out all right. Little did I know how quickly things would change. Around the 4th month of living with Thomas and his family, I began noticing subtle shifts in the household dynamic. Nothing dramatic enough to confront directly, just small moments that left me feeling increasingly uneasy. One evening, passing by their master bedroom, I overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for my ears. How long is your dad planning to stay exactly? Stephanie was asking, her voice pitched low. We talked about this, Thomas replied. He just lost Mom. He needs time. I know. But having him around all the time is cramping our style. The kids are getting too attached, and he has opinions about everything from how we discipline them to what we eat for dinner. He is trying to help. I know. But this was supposed to be our dream home, not a multi-generational living experiment. I walked away quietly before they could realize I had overheard. That night, I lay awake wondering if I had made a mistake in selling my house. But surely this was just an adjustment period. All new living arrangements take time to find their balance. Over the next few weeks, Stephanie became increasingly critical of my contributions to the household. The beef stew I made was too salty. The way I folded the laundry was not how we do it. The stories I told the grandchildren were outdated, each criticism delivered with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. I began second-guessing myself, wondering if I was indeed imposing my ways on their household. Thomas, meanwhile, started mentioning household expenses more frequently in my presence. The water bill was crazy high this month, he would comment during dinner. Or, property taxes in this neighborhood are really something else. Never directly asking me to contribute more, but the implication hanging in the air like a storm cloud. One evening, during a family dinner with some of Stephanie's relatives visiting, her sister asked how everyone was adjusting to the new living arrangement. Well, it is certainly an education in supporting 3 generations under one roof, Stephanie replied with a laugh that sounded forced. Dad is getting a taste of what it costs to maintain a home in this neighborhood. I would be happy to contribute more toward groceries and utilities, I offered, feeling all eyes on me. Thomas waved his hand dismissively. "That is not necessary, Dad. We invited you to live here," but his tone suggested otherwise. The conversation moved on, but the discomfort lingered. My 68th birthday came and went without acknowledgement from Thomas or Stephanie. In previous years, even after Margaret's passing, Thomas had at least called or sent a card. This year, nothing. The grandchildren made me handmade cards at school, which they presented proudly at breakfast, but neither parent mentioned the occasion. I told myself they were busy with work and the children's activities, that it wasn't intentional. But the oversight stung nevertheless. I found myself retreating to my room more frequently to avoid the growing tension. I would watch television with headphones so as not to disturb anyone, read books, or video chat with my old friend Frank, who had retired to Arizona. "How is the family situation?" he would ask. And I would reply that everything was fine, unwilling to admit even to my closest friend that I was feeling increasingly unwelcome in my son's home. One afternoon, Stephanie hosted her book club in the living room. 6 women from the neighborhood sipping wine and discussing the latest bestseller. I had planned to stay in my room, but needed to retrieve my medication from the kitchen. As I passed through, I overheard one of the women asking Stephanie about the challenges of multi-generational living. "It has its moments," Stephanie replied with a sigh. "The biggest issue is establishing boundaries. Parents from that generation just have different expectations about their role in their adult children's lives." I hurried back to my room, medication in hand, heart heavy with the realization that my presence was viewed as a burden rather than a blessing. That night, looking at Margaret's photo, I whispered, "I am not sure I am keeping my promise to you, Maggie. Things are not what they seem here." The situation deteriorated further when Thomas began asking pointed questions about my finances. What had started as casual conversation turned into something that felt more like an interrogation. "So, Dad, how much is your pension exactly?" he asked one evening, while Stephanie was bathing the children. $3,400 a month, I answered, plus Social Security. "And you have investment savings from the house sale?" "Yes, just under $300,000. Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Planning for the future, you know. Making sure everything is in order for all of us." The conversation left me uneasy, but I tried to dismiss my concerns. Thomas worked in finance after all. Perhaps he was genuinely trying to help me manage my retirement funds. A week later, I returned from a doctor's appointment to find Stephanie had rearranged the family room. The small side table where I had placed a few framed photos of Margaret was now empty. "I moved your personal items to your bedroom," she explained when I asked. "I thought it would be nice to update the common areas with a more cohesive design aesthetic." Her words were polite, but the message was clear. My presence in the house was to be minimized, contained to my assigned space. Even Margaret's memory was deemed unsuitable for the common areas. Sunday dinners, once a time of connection, became a weekly ordeal. During one particularly tense meal, Stephanie brought up my water usage. "The water bill was much higher this quarter," she announced, looking pointedly in my direction. "I have been watering the garden," I admitted. "The new rose bushes need extra care to get established. We are in a drought, Billy. Maybe we should reconsider having so many plants that need water. Or perhaps you could contribute to the water bill specifically." Thomas said nothing, studying his plate as if the answer to all life's problems could be found in his mashed potatoes. Later that week, passing Thomas's home office, I overheard him on the phone. "Yeah, supporting Dad financially is stretching us a bit thin right now," he was saying to someone. He contributed a bit when he first moved in, but that was months ago. I stood frozen in the hallway, my chest tight with hurt. Supporting me financially? I had given them $30,000. I cooked, cleaned, did yard work, and provided free childcare. If anything, I was saving them money. The realization that Thomas viewed me as a financial burden rather than a contributing member of the household was painful beyond words. Even my relationship with the grandchildren was affected. Stephanie began scheduling more activities during my usual time with them. Swimming lessons during the afternoon hours when I typically helped Jackson with his model airplanes. Playdates for Emma when we normally baked cookies together. When I mentioned missing our special times, Stephanie smiled thinly. The children need to socialize with peers their own age. It is important for their development. The confrontation over the living room television marked another turning point. I had settled in to watch a documentary about World War II, a subject that had interested me since my father served in the Pacific. 15 minutes into the program, Stephanie entered with 4 other women. "Billy, I am hosting book club today." I mentioned it at breakfast. She had not mentioned it. I was certain. But rather than cause a scene, I stood up. "No problem. I will watch in my room. Actually, we will be using the entire first floor. Some of the ladies are sensitive to noise. Would you mind going out for a couple hours? Maybe visit the library?" It was 40 degrees and raining outside. I had planned my entire day around watching this documentary. But again, to keep the peace, I complied. I spent 3 hours at the local diner, nursing a cup of coffee and feeling like a visitor with no real home. Thomas's comments about housing costs grew more frequent. Property taxes went up again, he would mention at dinner. Or, the homeowners association raised their fees. Each statement delivered with a significant glance in my direction, as if expecting me to volunteer more money. When I finally gathered the courage to address the growing tension, Thomas dismissed my concerns entirely. "You are imagining things, Dad. We love having you here. It has just been a stressful time at work for both of us." But his actions told a different story. When Thanksgiving approached, I offered to cook the turkey the way Margaret always had, with her special herb butter under the skin. "Actually, Stephanie has already ordered a prepared meal from Bristol Farms," Thomas informed me. Less stress that way. The holidays brought another painful revelation. While discussing summer plans, Stephanie mentioned a 2-week vacation to Hawaii they were planning. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "The grandkids will love the beach." An awkward silence fell over the table. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat. "Actually, Dad, we were thinking this would be just us. You know, Stephanie, me, and the kids." "Oh, I see," I replied, trying to hide my hurt. "Of course. Family vacation. You are family," Thomas said quickly. "It is just that the condo we are renting is only 3 bedrooms and—" He trailed off, unable to finish the transparent excuse. The message was clear. I was family when convenient, an outsider when not. The most disturbing discovery came in December when I accidentally opened mail addressed to Thomas. Thinking it was the electric bill I had offered to pay that month, I found instead an information packet about reverse mortgages specifically for seniors living with adult children. Several paragraphs were highlighted, discussing how parents could contribute substantially to household expenses by leveraging their retirement savings. I carefully resealed the envelope, my hands shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. Christmas morning revealed the final indignity of that difficult year. Under the tree sat beautifully wrapped presents for everyone. Stephanie had received a diamond bracelet from Thomas. Thomas unwrapped a high-end golf club set from Stephanie. Jackson and Emma were showered with toys, games, and new tablets. My gifts from them, a package of undershirts and a generic gift card to a home improvement store with $25 loaded onto it. The message could not have been clearer if they had written it in neon lights. "You are not a priority in this family." As the winter dragged on, I found myself sinking into depression. I avoided the main areas of the house whenever possible. I ate dinner in my room more often than not. I stopped offering to help with the children's homework or activities, tired of being rebuffed or rescheduled. Each night, I would look at Margaret's photo and apologize for failing to maintain the family bonds she had valued so deeply. Then came the announcement that would change everything. "Dad," Thomas said one Wednesday evening, "Stephanie and I want to have an important family financial discussion on Friday night. Just the adults. I have asked Mrs. Peterson next door to watch the kids." The formal nature of the request sent a chill down my spine. In my heart, I already knew what was coming. For 2 days, anxiety gnawed at my insides. I barely slept, running through possible scenarios in my mind. Perhaps they wanted to suggest I find my own place. Maybe they needed a larger contribution for household expenses. Whatever it was, the formal nature of this family financial discussion suggested it wouldn't be a casual conversation. Friday evening arrived with an air of foreboding. Thomas had set the dining room table with legal pads and calculators, like some kind of business meeting. Stephanie had prepared a pitcher of iced tea and a plate of store-bought cookies, an artificial hospitality that did nothing to mask the tension in the room. "Thanks for joining us, Dad," Thomas began, his voice taking on the professional tone he probably used with clients. "Stephanie and I have been reviewing our family finances, and we wanted to discuss some adjustments that would benefit everyone." I nodded, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "As you know, raising children in today's economy is expensive," he continued. "Jackson's private school tuition increases every year. Emma will be starting there next fall. Then there are the extracurricular activities, the college funds we need to build, the mortgage on this house." Stephanie nodded along, her expression serious. She slid a folder across the table toward me. "We have prepared some figures for you to review," she said. "A breakdown of the household expenses and how they have increased since you moved in." I opened the folder to find spreadsheets detailing electricity usage, water consumption, grocery expenses, and even an estimated wear and tear on household appliances and furniture. Each category had a before Billy and after Billy column, with the differences highlighted in yellow. "These numbers are quite revealing," Stephanie continued. "As you can see, having a third adult in the home has increased our monthly expenses by approximately $720. Thomas cleared his throat. "Dad, you have been living here rent-free for 10 months now. We have been happy to help you transition after Mom's passing, but we need to discuss a more equitable financial arrangement going forward." My stomach tightened. "What did you have in mind?" That's when Thomas delivered the line that would forever change our relationship. Looking me straight in the eyes, he said, "You're living here rent-free. It's only fair you give us half your pension." Stephanie nodded in agreement, her expression suggesting this was a perfectly reasonable request. "Your Social Security should be more than enough for your personal expenses," she added. "You hardly go anywhere or buy anything. Half my pension, $1,700 a month. More than a fair rent for a single bedroom and bathroom in their house, even in this upscale neighborhood." But it wasn't just the amount that stunned me. It was the entitlement behind the request, the assumption that my money belonged to them simply because I was the parent. My hands went cold. My heart pounded in my chest. For a moment I couldn't speak, couldn't process what my own son was asking of me. I looked at Thomas, searching for any sign of the little boy I had once taught to ride a bike, the teenager whose sports games I never missed, the young man whose education I had sacrificed to fund. A memory flashed through my mind. Thomas at 10 years old, crying because a school bully had taken his lunch money. "Don't worry, son," I had promised him. "I will always take care of you. That is what fathers do." Now here he was, 38 years old, effectively bullying his own father for money. "We are also concerned about your food consumption," Stephanie added into the silence. "You eat larger portions than the children, which has significantly increased our grocery budget. And you watch television during peak electricity hours." I stared at her, wondering how this woman could speak to her father-in-law, a man who had given her $15,000 for her honeymoon, with such clinical coldness. Did she see me as a person at all, or merely a financial burden with an exploitable income stream? Thomas and Stephanie sat waiting for my response, the silence stretching between us like a widening chasm. Thomas tapped his pen against the legal pad, a nervous habit he had had since college. Stephanie sipped her iced tea, her eyes occasionally darting to the expensive watch on her wrist. In that painful silence, I thought about the decades of sacrifices I had made for Thomas, the vacations Margaret and I never took so we could save for his education, the second job I worked for 3 years to pay for braces he needed as a teenager, the down payment we had contributed to his first car, the countless hockey practices and games I had driven him to despite bone-crushing exhaustion from construction work. I thought about the $30,000 I had given them when I moved in, money Thomas had apparently never mentioned to Stephanie based on her complaints about my free living arrangements. I thought about the hours of free childcare, the meals cooked, the yard maintained, all the ways I had tried to contribute to this household beyond mere dollars. And as these thoughts swirled through my mind, something unexpected happened. A smile began to form on my face. Not a happy smile, but the kind that comes when something is so absurd, so beyond reasonable, that it clarifies everything in an instant. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The chair legs scraped against the hardwood floor as I slowly stood up. The sound seemed to startle Thomas, who looked up from his notes with a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Stephanie straightened in her seat, her perfectly manicured fingernails tapping against her water glass. "I never thought I would hear such words from my own son," I began, my voice calmer than I felt inside. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that the child I raised would see his father as nothing more than a source of income to be squeezed. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, that is not what this is about. We are just trying to create a fair arrangement for everyone." I held up my hand, silencing him. "Let me finish. For 40 years I worked construction, broke my back putting up buildings all over this city. Your mother and I lived modestly, so we could give you opportunities we never had." I turned my attention to the spreadsheet Stephanie had prepared. "You have calculated the cost of having me in your home down to the penny. Very thorough. But have you calculated what I have given to this family over the years?" Neither of them spoke. "Let me help you with that accounting," I continued. "When you were 16, Thomas, and wanted that used Camaro, who gave you the $2,000 for the down payment? When your college scholarship only covered half the tuition, who paid the rest? When you graduated with student loan debt, who helped you pay it off so you could start your adult life without that burden?" Thomas stared at the table, unable to meet my gaze. "And when you got married," I said, looking at Stephanie, "Margaret and I gave you $15,000 as a wedding gift, money that paid for half of your European honeymoon, money we had saved for our own retirement travels." Stephanie's eyes widened slightly. She glanced at Thomas questioningly. "But most revealing," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, "is that when I moved in here 10 months ago, I wrote you a check for $30,000 as my contribution to this household. Money you apparently never mentioned to your wife, based on her repeated comments about me living here, rent-free." Stephanie's head snapped toward Thomas. "You never told me about any $30,000, she said, her voice sharp with accusation. Thomas winced. "I was going to tell you. I put it in our investment account for the kids' college fund." "Without discussing it with me?" Stephanie's voice rose. "We are supposed to make financial decisions together." I watched their exchange with a detached sense of clarity, like a man who had been lost in a fog suddenly finding his way. "I'll be moving out by the end of the month," I announced. That got their attention. Both turned to stare at me, momentarily forgetting their own disagreement. "Moving out?" Thomas repeated. "Dad, that is not necessary. We can work something out." "There is nothing to work out," I replied. "When you invited me to live here, I believed it was because you wanted your grieving father to be close to his family. Now I understand it was because you saw an opportunity. A senior with a pension and savings, a live-in babysitter and gardener, a checkbook with legs." "Dad, you are overreacting," Thomas protested. "We just need some financial help with the expenses. That is not unreasonable." "Half my pension is not some financial help, Thomas. It is exploitation, and it stops now." Stephanie, recovering from her shock over the $30,000 revelation, attempted damage control. "Billy, we value having you here. The children adore you. We can discuss a more reasonable contribution." "The time for discussion has passed," I said firmly. "Some words cannot be taken back." From upstairs came the sound of a door opening. Little feet padded along the hallway. Emma's tear-streaked face appeared at the top of the stairs. "Why is everyone yelling?" she asked, her lower lip trembling. Jackson appeared beside her, his expression worried. "Is Grandpa in trouble?" Stephanie rushed to the stairs. "Everything is fine, sweeties. Grown-ups are just talking. Go back to your room." "Are you making Grandpa leave?" Jackson asked, too perceptive for his age. "Of course not," Thomas said quickly. "Grandpa is part of our family." The lie hung in the air between us. I looked at my grandchildren's worried faces and felt my heart break anew. No one is making me leave, I assured them gently. Grandpa is just thinking about getting his own place nearby. I will still see you all the time. Stephanie ushered the children back to their rooms while Thomas turned to me, his expression desperate. Dad, please. Let us forget this conversation happened. We can start over. No, Thomas, we can't. Tonight has shown me exactly where I stand in your life, and it is not where a father should be. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt something beyond grief, a burning sense of resolve, a determination to reclaim my dignity. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Frank, it is Billy. I need your help. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a strange mixture of emotions washed over me. Profound sadness that my relationship with my son had come to this. Anger at being viewed as a resource rather than a person. But beneath these feelings ran an unexpected current of liberation. For months, I had been walking on eggshells, trying to justify my existence in this house. Now, finally, I could stop pretending. I could start rebuilding my life on my own terms. You would be disappointed in him, Maggie, I whispered to Margaret's photo. But I think you would be proud of what I am about to do. The next morning, I woke with purpose for the first time in months. Before Thomas and Stephanie were even out of bed, I was on the phone with my friend Frank, who had worked in real estate before retiring to Arizona. Need help finding a place, huh? Frank said after I explained the situation. I am sorry it came to this, Billy, but I can't say I am surprised. I have seen it happen to other folks our age. I just need some guidance, I replied. It has been decades since I apartment hunted. I still have contacts in Portland. Let me make some calls. And Billy, you are doing the right thing. When I emerged from my room, Thomas was at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and pretending to read the news on his tablet. Stephanie was packing school lunches with more concentration than the task required. The artificial normalcy was almost comical. Good morning, I said pleasantly, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Dad, about last night. Thomas began hesitantly. I will be out by the end of the month, I stated matter-of-factly, cutting off whatever rehearsed speech he had prepared. I would appreciate your help arranging a moving truck for my furniture in your attic. Dad, please. We were just trying to have an honest conversation about finances. Maybe we approached it wrong. I looked at my son directly. 3 weeks, Thomas. Then you and Stephanie can have your house back exactly as you wanted. Stephanie abandoned the lunches and turned toward me. Billy, the children will be devastated. They love having their grandfather here. I will still see the children regularly, but I need my own space. Last night made that abundantly clear. The panic in their eyes was revealing. They had expected me to either acquiesce to their demands or negotiate. My firm decision to leave entirely had caught them off guard. Throughout breakfast, Thomas made awkward attempts at normal conversation, while Stephanie kept mentioning how much the children enjoyed having me around. The sudden concern for my feelings would have been touching if it hadn't been so transparently self-serving. That afternoon, while they were at work and the children at school, I met with Frank's realtor contact, Amanda. She picked me up and took me to see 3 apartments in senior living communities within a 20-minute drive of Thomas's house. These communities are designed for independent seniors, she explained. You have your own apartment but access to social activities, a community center, and emergency services if needed. The first 2 properties were nice but didn't feel right. The third, Oakwood Terrace, immediately felt like somewhere I could call home. A 1-bedroom unit with a small patio overlooking a community garden. The rent was reasonable, well within my budget even without touching my savings. The community featured a woodworking shop in the recreation center, something that immediately caught my interest. Before Margaret's illness, woodworking had been my favorite hobby. There's a 6-month waiting list typically, Amanda warned. What if I paid 6 months' rent in advance? I asked. Her eyebrows rose. That might change things. Let me speak to the manager. By the end of the day, I had signed a lease beginning in 3 weeks. I wrote a check for the security deposit and 6 months' rent from my savings account. A weight lifted from my shoulders as I signed my name on the lease agreement. For the first time in almost a year, I was taking control of my life again. That evening, I began quietly sorting through my belongings, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. Thomas came to my door as I was organizing my closet. "What are you doing?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "Preparing to move," I replied simply. "Dad, you don't have to do this. We can work something out." I paused my sorting and faced him directly. "Thomas, last night you and Stephanie showed me exactly how you see me in your lives. I am a financial resource, not a family member. I deserve better than that. And at my age, I don't have time to waste in places where I am not valued. That is not fair," he protested. "Of course we value you. Enough to demand half my pension?" I asked quietly. "Enough to count the food I eat and the electricity I use?" He had no answer for that. Over the next few days, Stephanie attempted her own form of reconciliation, primarily by using the children as emotional leverage. Jackson asked if you would still take him fishing if you move away. She mentioned casually over dinner. "Of course I will," I assured him directly. "Grandpa will always make time for you and Emma. We can have special days together. But it won't be the same as having you here all the time," she pressed. "No, it won't," I agreed. "But some changes are necessary." The children's genuine sadness was the most difficult part of my decision. One evening, Emma crawled into my lap as I sat in the armchair in my room, her small arms wrapping around my neck. "Daddy says you're moving to a new house," she said, her voice small and worried. "That is right, sweetheart. Grandpa is going to have his own place, but it is not far away, and you can visit me, and I will visit you. But why can't you stay here with us? Don't you love us anymore?" Her question broke my heart. "I will always love you and Jackson more than anything in the world," I assured her. "Sometimes grown-ups need their own space, like how you have your own bedroom, because sometimes you need time by yourself. Grandpa needs a place like that too." She seemed to accept this explanation, though not happily. Jackson was more perceptive. "Is it because Mom and Dad want your money?" he asked bluntly, when we were alone. I nearly choked in surprise. "What makes you say that, buddy?" "I heard Mom telling her friend on the phone that you have a good pension but don't contribute enough to household expenses," he replied, pronouncing the adult phrases carefully. "And then they had that meeting with you. And now you're leaving. Out of the mouths of babes." I chose my words carefully. "Your parents and I have different ideas about family finances. Sometimes adults disagree about important things, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anybody is bad or wrong, just different." He nodded solemnly. "Will you still teach me woodworking?" "Absolutely. In fact, my new place has a whole workshop we can use together." About a week before my planned move, Thomas discovered the moving boxes I had been collecting in my closet. His reaction was immediate and forceful. "You're really going through with this?" he demanded, gesturing at the half-packed boxes. "After everything we've done for you?" The phrase ignited a spark of anger I had been suppressing. "Everything you've done for me?" I repeated incredulously. "Thomas, I gave you $30,000 when I moved in. I've cooked, cleaned, and provided free childcare for 10 months. I maintained your yard and fixed things around the house. What exactly have you done for me, besides provide a room and make me feel increasingly unwelcome in it?" "That's not fair," he protested. "We gave you a home when you were grieving. No, you saw an opportunity when I was vulnerable. There's a difference. You're overreacting to one financial discussion," he insisted. "Families have these conversations all the time. Normal families don't demand half a parent's pension, Thomas. They don't nickel and dime their father over electricity usage. They don't treat a grieving widow like a profit center." My calm, direct response seemed to deflate his anger, replacing it with something that looked almost like shame. "Almost. The kids will be devastated," he said quietly, his final emotional leverage. "I'm not abandoning the children, Thomas. I'm establishing healthy boundaries with you and Stephanie. There's a difference there, too." Moving day arrived with a mixture of relief and sadness. Frank had flown in from Arizona to help, a gesture of friendship that touched me deeply. 2 of my old colleagues from the construction company also showed up with their pickup trucks. Together, We loaded my belongings, including the furniture from Thomas's attic, and transported everything to Oakwood Terrace. Thomas stood in the driveway watching, offering occasional half-hearted assistance. Stephanie remained inside, claiming a migraine. The children, however, were fully involved, insisting on carrying small items and asking detailed questions about my new home. "Do you have a swimming pool?" Emma wanted to know. "The community has one, yes." "Can we come swim there?" Jackson asked. "Any time you want, buddy." As the last box was loaded, the moment for goodbyes arrived. I knelt down to hug my grandchildren, fighting back tears. "Grandpa loves you both so much," I told them, "and I'll see you very soon. We'll have special Grandpa days with fun adventures." "Promise?" Emma asked, her little fingers gripping my shirt. "Cross my heart," I assured her. Standing to face Thomas was harder. So much remained unsaid between us, so many complicated emotions. "Dad," he began awkwardly, "this isn't how I wanted things to turn out." "I know," I replied. "Me neither." We shook hands, a formal gesture that underscored the new distance between us. As I climbed into Frank's car, I looked back at the house where I had hoped to find family connection after Margaret's death. Instead, I had found a painful lesson about expectations and boundaries. As we drove away, I felt a complex mixture of grief and relief washing over me. "You okay, Billy?" Frank asked, glancing over. "I will be," I answered. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. That first night in my new apartment was strange. The silence felt different from the lonely silence I had experienced after Margaret's death. This silence belonged to me. No one would interrupt it with complaints or demands. No one would make me feel unwelcome in my own space. I arranged Margaret's photos on the nightstand and bookshelf, placing her favorite one next to my bed. "Well, Maggie," I said to her smiling image, "it's just you and me again. But I think we're going to be okay this time." 6 months passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. My life at Oakwood Terrace developed a comfortable rhythm that I hadn't experienced since before Margaret's illness. Each morning began with coffee on my small patio, watching birds visit the community garden. 3 times a week, I joined a walking group that circled the property's perimeter trail, gradually building my stamina and making new friends along the way. The community center became a second home. I enrolled in a woodworking class and discovered my skills were still sharp enough to help others. Soon I was teaching fellow residents how to make simple birdhouses and picture frames. The workshop smelled of sawdust and possibility, reminiscent of happy days in my garage when Thomas was a boy. Most unexpected was my friendship with Dorothy, a 72-year-old widow who lived in the apartment across the courtyard. She had lost her husband to heart disease 5 years earlier and had moved to Oakwood to be closer to her daughter. Unlike my situation, her relationship with her children remained loving and supportive. We bonded over shared grief, and gradually, coffee after walking group turned into dinner once a week, then twice. Nothing romantic, just the comfortable companionship of 2 people who understood loss and the challenge of building a new life afterward. "You seem different from when you first moved in," Dorothy observed one evening as we shared a meal on my patio. "More at peace." "I am," I agreed. "For the first time since Margaret died, I feel like I'm living rather than just existing." The seniors' bowling league on Thursdays became another highlight. I hadn't bowled regularly since my 30s, but the muscle memory returned quickly. Our team, the Alley Cats, rarely won but always had the most fun. Frank visited from Arizona and joked that I had more active social life than he did. My relationship with Thomas settled into a new pattern. I saw the grandchildren twice a month, usually taking them for Saturday outings to the zoo, science museum, or parks. Thomas would drop them off at my apartment, the exchanges brief and slightly awkward. Sometimes Stephanie came along, sometimes not. When she did, her manner was unfailingly polite but cold, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than family. I never asked about their financial situation, and they never again brought up my pension. The subject had become taboo between us, an unhealed wound we carefully avoided touching. But I heard through Jackson that they had downsized some expenses, canceling their country club membership and postponing their Hawaii vacation. Part of me felt sad for my grandchildren's disappointment, but a small, honest part felt a grim satisfaction that Thomas and Stephanie had to face the reality of living within their actual means. As Christmas approached, I invited the grandchildren to help decorate my apartment. Together we set up a small tree, hung lights on the patio railing, and baked Margaret's famous gingerbread cookies. When Thomas arrived to pick them up, I surprised myself by inviting him in. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" I offered. "Nothing fancy, just pot roast." His surprise was evident. "Sure, Dad. That would be nice." That meal marked a tentative step toward healing. We avoided difficult subjects, focusing instead on the children's school activities and my new hobbies. When he left, his "thank you, Dad" seemed to carry more weight than the simple courtesy. I agreed to spend Christmas Day at their house, bringing carefully chosen gifts for everyone. For the children, handcrafted wooden toys I had made in the workshop. For Thomas and Stephanie, a peace offering of sorts, a handmade cutting board of maple and walnut. Stephanie's tight smile suggested she would have preferred something from a high-end department store, but Thomas recognized the hours of work involved. "This is beautiful, Dad," he said, running his fingers over the smooth surface, like the ones Mom used to have. "She always said handmade gifts carry part of the giver's spirit," I replied. As we sat in their living room, surrounded by expensive decorations and the mountain of toys the children had received, I noticed Thomas watching me curiously. "You seem different, Dad," he observed. "Happier." "I am," I confirmed. "Turns out standing up for yourself is good for the soul." He winced slightly but nodded. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he said quietly while Stephanie was busy in the kitchen. "I didn't handle things well. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest he had come to acknowledging his behavior." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." "Do you think we can ever get back to how things were?" he asked. I considered his question carefully. "No," I said finally. "But maybe we can build something new that's better. Something based on mutual respect rather than expectation." He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "I'd like that." As months turned into a year, I reflected often on the painful journey that had led me to this unexpected new chapter of life. The loss of Margaret had left a hole in my heart that would never fully heal, but around that empty space I had built a life worth living. I had discovered strengths I hadn't known I possessed. I had learned that family ties, while precious, must be founded on respect to truly nurture both parties. When my friend Frank asked what I had learned from the whole experience, I told him, "I learned that love can become entitlement if you're not careful. I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst instincts. And I learned that it's never too late to start over." One evening in spring, as I sat on my patio watching the sunset, my phone rang with Thomas's number. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Our relationship was still healing, still fragile, but something prompted me to answer. "Dad?" His voice sounded different, humbled somehow. "I've been doing some thinking. A lot of thinking, actually. I need to apologize for how Stephanie and I treated you. It was wrong, and I'm ashamed." I sat in silence, letting his words sink in. The apology I had stopped expecting had finally arrived. "Thank you, son," I said simply. "That means a lot. I was wondering," he continued hesitantly, "if you might be willing to have dinner with me. Just me, not Stephanie. There are some things I'd like to talk about. About Mom, about our family, about the kind of son and father I want to be." "I'd like that very much," I told him, a warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the sunset. As I ended the call, I looked at Margaret's photo on the small table beside me. "Progress, Maggie," I whispered. "Slow but real. Life rarely gives us perfect resolutions, but sometimes it offers new beginnings, disguised as painful endings." My son and I still had a long road ahead, but for the first time since that fateful family meeting, I believed we might find our way back to each other. Not as we were before, but as something new, something tempered by difficult truth and hard-won wisdom. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that hurt in the moment, but ultimately led to healing? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences that remind us it's never too late to stand up for yourself with dignity and grace. Your support means everything to this old-timer trying to share what life has taught him. Until next time, remember that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply walk away with your head held high.